Hi guys. So I promise you I'm not going to make a habit of making third-person videos. But I am currently driving back from the New River Gorge. Went down there over Memorial Day weekend, and I got a few hours to kill. So I thought I'd use that time and try to describe to you a problem I've been chewing on for the past few months. I was attempting to explain this to some friends of mine this past weekend, and I thought I'd try to share it with everyone else, now that I don't have a few beers in me. But I'm going to do my best to try to make this as simple as possible. It does involve some math, and I should probably do a separate video and write all the math out, and it really does better describe what I feel might be a problem. I'm not totally certain if it's a problem or not, and I'll explain why later. But this is in regards to spring-loaded camming devices, and it works like this. So you have a vertical crack, and you imagine two parallel walls of rock. All right. Now, in between those walls is essentially what looks like an arrow pointed up. So the long part of the arrow, that vertical shaft of the arrow, we'll call it, would be represented by the stem of the cam. And then you have the two little wings on the arrow, and we'll just call them wings. Now, between the stem and the wings, or the shaft and the wings, there's an axle point. So those wings can pivot out, and they can contract or they expand, but they're pivoting off the point of the arrow. In a spring-loaded camming device, those wings are trying to pivot out as far as they can, but they're blocked by the walls of rock. All right. Now, essentially, SLCDs are producing that exact shape. Now they do that via those lobes. And those lobes have they're logarithmic spirals. They have a very specific shape. And the idea is the angle at which those wings on the arrow touch the rock. The angle between, the rock face. Let me make sure I have this right. Well, between I'm gaining an appreciation here for the guys on Top Gear that can actually talk into a camera while driving. It is a lot more harder than I thought. That angle is very, very specific, and no matter how engaged or disengaged your cam is when placed in a crack, that angle is preserved. That's the idea. The reason for this is it produces like a force multiplier directed outward during a fall and increases the friction force at those points of contact. So let's look at it this way. We have a force during a fall event, all right, a force along the shaft of that arrow, and it's pointed down. And we have, let me make sure I got that point right. We have the friction force that's trying to keep everything in place, okay? So really, we want that friction force to be greater than the fall force, sensible. So a friction force is written as a coefficient of friction. And we're concerned, we're talking about Yosemite, we're concerned about aluminum, which is what these things are made of, and granite, which is the rock type in Yosemite. All right, and that's just a single number, and we take that number, that coefficient, and we multiply it against the force that's kind of, think about pushing those, the aluminum and granite together. Okay, so those wings on that arrow I was describing, they're trying to pivot up as much as they possibly can, and there's a force that's pushing outward to do that. All right, so that force multiplied by this coefficient. So I'm going to call that force the force on the wing. Now we have a fall force that's along that shaft pointed down. And we want to know how that fall force relates to the force pushing outward. And we can use trigonometry and figure that out. It's pretty simple. If you remember, tangent is opposite over adjacent. And our opposite of the angle that we're concerned about, remember that we have a camming angle. I'm sorry, that's that angle on the wing against the rock. We call it the camming angle. And every manufacturer has their own camming angle, by the way. So like Metolius uses 13.25, I believe. BD uses 14.25. DMM uses 13.75. And Wild Country is like drastically bigger. It's like 16 degrees. Generally within the industry, 14 degrees is kind of considered like the best balance between safety and functionality or active range. So the greater the angle, the more the bigger range that a single cam can operate in. The more shallow that angle is, the more force it can take. Let me finish my description. So on one side of our equation, we have a force on the wing multiplied by a coefficient of friction. And that has to be greater than or equal to this force that's going down. Now, that force going down, if we think about our camming angle, where that is, a camming angle, the tangent of that camming angle is going to be equal to opposite over adjacent. So opposite would be our force during a fall, our fall force, divided by our adjacent, which is that force in that wing. What we're going to get is our fall force is equal to the force on the wing multiplied by tangent of our camming angle. Okay, so our whole equation right now looks like a coefficient of friction multiplied by the force on the wing is greater than or equal to the force on the wing times tangent of our camming angle. All right. Well, we have force on the wing on both sides of our equation, so we can actually reduce this equation to the coefficient of friction. I love this, by the way. The coefficient of friction is greater than or equal to the tangent of our camming angle. That's nuts. That is so cool. I mean, what's so cool about that is our forces cancel out. We don't even need to consider that, when we're designing these things. All we need to know, we have a number that the coefficient of friction, that's an established number, that's not going to change. All right, so when we're trying to choose an angle, a camming angle, to shape our lobes, we're going to just choose some number that is less than or equal to, generally less than, this coefficient of friction, which is about, I can't remember if it's 0.25 or 0.5, I think it's 0.5. Because we're actually doing this on both sides of that arrow that I described, both sides of the cam. But really, we can just take it and multiply it by 2, and that it'll still work out. Anyway, so that shape of the lobes, by the way, follows the formula. You have like a constant R0 multiplied by E, which is a constant, raised to the power of, because we're doing this in a polar coordinate system, theta times tangent of our camming angle. That tangent, that camming angle comes from what we just worked out as far as the forces go. Now this is it's elegant and simple and effective. I mean, these things continue to work. I've fallen on them, they've held. I have seen them blown too, and they blow for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're not placed well. That's totally possible. Maybe the rock type isn't granite. Sandstone, possibly. Quartzite, which is sort of interesting. They also aren't exactly vertical. Cracks meander. They go at angles. They go sideways, even. And if we think about our vectors and forces, what I was just describing, you have two parallel walls of rock and this arrow in between it, you know. All right, we'll take that whole thing and turn it sideways. And what we have now is climbing in the gunks. So we have this cam, this spring-loaded camming device that was designed for vertical placements that we're now using in horizontals. So what does that do? Well, let's think back to our equation. So the forces canceled out nicely in our equation. If we place a cam horizontally, well, that arrow that I described earlier, so now our arrow is horizontal and the wings kind of like come up at an angle up and down. Well, the stem now will sit at an angle because it has to rest on the lower rock wall. And the camming angle is now different top to bottom on our cam. I'm gonna disregard like friction forces that happen against the stem on the edge of the rock. That will do something. Let's just assume it just glides right over, you know, like virtually frictionless. It's gonna be the force of the wings plus our directional force, or I'm sorry, our lateral force, and that times our coefficient of friction greater than or equal to the same thing on the other side. Now, if you do the algebra, well, that lateral force cancels out again. So we're okay. You know, everything seems to work until the stem angle gets past our camming angle. And then a lot of interesting things happen in the math. See, when we're talking about tangent, what happens is our camming angle, let's assume that, you know, in our camming angle here, or I'm sorry, in our placement, the stem's now bending down at 15 degrees, okay, roughly, you know, and so that's gonna be past our camming angle on a majority of cams that are made. When that happens, our camming angle now has gone to zero. It actually is beyond, it goes in the negative. And we get 90 degrees from the contact point at the top to the stem. Which, not considering the tension that the spring is putting on the lobe, that lobe is actually not putting any tension. We have no force on the wing on our top set of lobes. The bottom set of lobes, our camming angle has been increased. So remember what I said earlier about how the shallower the angle, the safer it is? That's because more force gets put on it. If you do, like, if you think about the whole tangent of an angle, and you can try a couple different values, you can see how it gets, like, that force FW, I'll call it, force in the wing, gets greater the shallower you get that angle. Well, we're making that angle bigger, and we're not getting as much force, you know. But what we are getting, though, is that lateral force that's now generated is pointing in the same direction as FW on the bottom load. So we can make the bottom load do more work. But that has a negative impact on the upper load, which would easily offset, let's say, that spring force I was talking about. At this point, things really start to break down. Now, there's a lot of other forces involved here, and there's a lot of other factors I'm really not, like, throwing out there, and honestly, I'm not sure. I have to explore it further to really explain much of it. But believe it or not, I'm not sure a lot of the manufacturers have considered this. Well, you know what? I'm sure they have exhaustively tested this equipment, and I've seen it work. I mean, they wouldn't be selling it otherwise. But I have not seen a good explanation of horizontals. In fact, if we look at the Metolius manual on cams, there's a picture of a cam. Now, it's in a vertical placement. The lobes are contracted enough, you know, like it's positive, with the exception the stem is at an angle. And this picture has a giant X over it, saying that's not good. That creates an instance where the cam is unsecure or can walk. And the thing is, take that same picture, rotate it 90 degrees, and you have every single placement that you've ever made in a horizontal. They also mention, Metolius also mentions in their manual about how you should avoid certain types of rock when playing, sandy rock. Sandstone's actually not really as secure as granite. Also tells you should probably avoid things like quartzite, which is half the gunks, and a lot of other places too. Seneca Rocks, much of these East Coast climbing, which is where I'm from. That's straight out of their manual. And by the way, I don't want to pick on Metolius. I like Metolius. I use their cams. I like the philosophy of the company. You can go online. You can see them. You can actually see what their manufacturing process is for each master cam. You can see them test it. I'm a fan. I really am. But they also are open enough that I can sit here and pick apart this stuff. I read into this. I like it. But anyway, this presents a very interesting paradigm. Are these things truly safe? They seem to work. Like I said, I've fallen on them. They've held. I saw my friend fall them and it blew. And I don't know why it blew, but there's a variety of reasons it could have. And the thing is he's generally very solid in his placements. He's very experienced, and it just happens. But it raises the question whether there's a very simple thing, design feature that we can make on these things to actually make them operate better, in a horizontal placement. Are they really good for horizontal placements? I'm not sure. It's something I've just been chewing on, working on, thinking about. We'll see where it goes. I will make another video and actually write out the math and draw it. It's a lot easier to understand. But until then, I thought I'd leave it there. I might post this on a different channel than what I usually post on. Maybe make a series of videos just exploring this. I have some ideas how to test this, and I'm kind of excited to give that a shot. We'll see what happens. Or I'll get, egged on to make weekend trips down to the New again because I like climbing. What can I say? So anyway, thought I'd share that with you guys. Be safe. Send hard, and